Woohoo! I'm not that late. Jax West from Stephen Avery Project and MAM Gossip and Justice with Jax. Today we are going over the final episode. Hello, Christopher. The final episode of what they're calling Convicting a Murderer, that is only available on a conservative website called Daily Wire that you have to pay $15 a month for. So my husband, since I used his card, has had to pay $30 for me to watch these 10 episodes. And I always say, I watch them so you don't have to. Hello, Sheila. So I watch them. I take notes. Actually, in today's thing, I was just writing my recap instead of taking notes. So I don't have little notes here to go over with y'all. I have my actual recap. So I will be reading the recap. Hey, Millbilly. I will be reading the recap that I wrote, and then when I am done with this live video, then I will post this one. I also finished today my recap of episode 9 that aired last week. Hello, Cassandra, and Kathy. So I still have to write up, because I want to say I've only posted before on Stephen Avery Project 1, 2, and 3. I'm not sure if I wrote up 4. I'd have to look. So I have 5, 6, 7, 8 to do. And it's just as I find the time to be able to write it up and then post it. So this episode, I would say before I get into my notes of it, is the worst one, in my opinion. I found it so boring. And really a huge stretch. And I didn't have time to get stuff to back up things on this. I'm going to sound like a douchebag, but I've been involved in this case for a while. And so most of the people, not most, a lot of the people that you see throughout this mockumentary, crapumentary, whatever childish thing I feel like calling it in the moment, I actually know them and have had past experiences with them. And as I read my recap to you, I will have some things in there that I said about these people, but I also wasn't going to just keep typing and going off on these people. I'm like, if you want to see what I fully have to say about them and the things that I know, then you'll just have to watch the live video, because it's so much easier for me to just complain and bitch out of my mouth than having to take the time to write it all. But I have screenshots and stuff that I would have to dig up from text messages with these people that I can show you who these people really are. But let's get into the recap for now, because their part in this episode doesn't come until farther in the end. So we will cross that bridge, I guess, when we get to it. So like I said, this time I did not take notes. I wrote the review as it was going. So I'm just going to read it to you. The episode starts with some guy playing a horrible song about Steven while they show the crazy fans at one of the family rallies. They talk to him at the rally, where he says he has written 17 songs about the case. Lindsay, there's not currently a new season. I assume there won't be another season unless Steven gets back into court. Now, I don't know this guy, that writes these songs. I know there's a lot of people in the Making a Murderer community that like this guy's songs. I thought the song that they were playing was not good, and I find it weird and creepy to write 17 songs about Stephen and Brendan. Maybe Millbilly can speak to it then, because he just said that he knows them. For those that don't know, Millbilly has a channel on YouTube where he gets really in depth into this case. So, so maybe he can. When I say I know a lot of these people, this dude that writes these songs, I don't know. I know people have tried to share his songs or whatever on Stephen Avery Project, and I haven't shared them. But I'm not the one that does most of the moderating of any of my pages. Christopher, a friend of mine, he's the one that handles all the bulk of the work. I'm like the face, and Christopher's all the actual work. I don't have the time that I once had now that I work full time to keep up with everything. So, but that's how the show starts, because what the beginning of this episode is they're showing a whole lot of the people at the rallies and their posts and all that stuff. And that's why I always refer to these people as fans, not supporters. We're talking about Making a Murderer in the Stephen Avery case, and then we're talking about the opposite side that has a show that they just put out on the Daily Wire called Convicting a Murderer, where they're trying to say Stephen is guilty. So these people are kind of odd, and so the show's making fun of the weird people who go to the rallies and the stuff that they do. So the next thing they show you, they show the one of the rallies in Ireland, while a guilter whines about the people who care about the case. Now, if I step back into when these rallies first began, I was the one who organized them. And I was also asked by the Avery family at that time if I would organize what we were calling, what was it called? Worldwide rallies. The first one. And my husband is the one that designed the logo for those rallies. And I even have in here, as I read, you'll see that I say that. But people are still to this day holding signs that my husband had printed and made. Hey, Sand. That my husband had made for the original rally that I had organized, and went through a whole lot of stuff to organize that first summer rally at the courthouse, because Manitowoc was trying to prevent me from doing it, and I had to fight with them. I had to get the ACLU involved, all that. And here's the first plug for my book, because I'm pathetic. Wrongfully Abused, Making an Advocate for Stephen Avery, that you can get on Amazon. So you would have to get my book to read everything that happened when I organized the original rally and the worldwide rallies and the fallout from all of that. So when they're showing this rally from Ireland and stuff again, I'm like, oh, yeah, I was the coordinator for the worldwide rallies. I actually still have stuff, documentation and stuff saved from all of that. But anyway, okay. Candace can't believe people will still do the rallies. They show the fans at a rally passing around a phone where Stephen is on the phone and talking to his supporters. Candace brings up the billboards in Wisconsin and the $10,000 reward. Again, just reading this, and then I'll go on to say more about it. Please don't get me started on how useless that reward is. It says it is only paid if the real killer is found guilty and is incarcerated. And that's never going to happen. I don't know what the full story is behind the guy from Australia who is putting up that money. But I read the fine print. And I know this guy is a friend to Steven, because Steven thinks of him as a friend because the guy is throwing money around and Steven likes that. But it says the real killer has to be found guilty for somebody to collect on that money. So nobody's ever going to be paid that money. So it's really a pointless thing. And I know Kathleen Zellner will bring up the reward like it's a good thing. So I'm the one shitting on everybody's parade on it. But when it says that the real killer has to be found guilty to collect, don't pay attention to that reward. It's nothing. It's not going to do anything for the case whatsoever. More interviews with the wackos at the rally. What I found interesting is there is a guy wearing a shirt my husband made, because he was wearing a shirt. Where is that here? Because I used to be the moderator, one of the moderators for Barb's group for Brendan. And so we did a whole thing. Where is it? Where is that sign? It used to be right here. And this room is such a mess. Because there's the hashtag We All Live on Avery Road. I don't know where the Brendan one is. But we did a whole hashtag thing for Brendan where it was hashtag I am Brendan Dassey. And so we did a whole campaign on that of, oh, here it is. I am Brendan Dassey. And then on the other side, I have, we are Brendan Dassey. So, and my husband made this. And so I would have people with mine, and then everybody else was encouraged to do the same, to take a picture, holding a sign saying, I am Brendan Dassey, or edit your picture where you put it on there, something like that. Because we were just trying to show at that time that anybody could be Brendan. Anybody could be coerced into a false confession. And so somebody in that clip on the back of the shirt, I saw the hashtag I am Brendan Dassey. So I'm like, oh, that's one of the shirts that my husband made. So, okay. Some expert says facts don't matter and that making a murder was preying on people's emotions. Press douche, because again, I'm childish and I give all these people nicknames, and I don't like to use their real names because they obviously want attention and I don't want to give them any more attention. So I just refer to him as Press douche. Press douche makes fun of the documentary for showing Steven as poor. A guilter said he didn't seem like a monster and he didn't want to believe that Steven was guilty when he first watched it. Factbender said certain people don't want the facts to interfere with their belief on what really happened. That cracked me up. Point that finger back at yourself. And I got another finger for you, Factbender. Expert says it is confirmation bias that people who think Steven is innocent become more defensive when given facts. The guilters on the show would laugh that people online would call them crats anytime they would post somewhere that Steven is guilty. Candace said there is a spiritual void inside anyone who supports Steven. A guilter said that they need this to be a part of their life because, anybody who supports Steven's innocence, they're basically trying to say that we have no lives. Now, there are plenty of people on both sides, as in the case of everything. Remember, I work in politics, as in everything, there's good and bad on both sides. There's, I guess you could say, good people who could think Steven and Brendan are guilty. I don't know. That totally grosses me out to even say that. There are good supporters. There are bad supporters. Get it. There's a whole lot of online bullies, period, on both sides. But Candace, who wants to, and everybody affiliated with this convicting a murderer, who wants to keep trying to target making a murderer for being one-sided, it's exactly what they're doing here. And we'll get into more of it, but they're constantly trying to show that anybody who believes Stephen... This is my friend calling me. Madonna's his favorite. And we're actually going to see Madonna in concert in February. Anyway, squirrel. So they're only showing one side, and they're showing messages and stuff of guilters, of people who think Stephen is innocent that are mean online. Right, there are. But let me tell you my history with this case that you can read in my book. Plug. I've been attacked like you wouldn't believe because of my support of Stephen. And I don't go anywhere else. I'm not on anybody's podcast. I don't have any SAC accounts. I didn't even know what a SAC account was until I got started on this whole making a murderer quest of people having fake Facebook pages and stuff so they could sneak into other groups to spy. Hi, Carla. Carla always likes to watch me. I don't do that. Nothing against anybody who's on multiple pages. There's plenty of people who are involved in the case that I don't like. I don't tell anybody don't be on those pages. I don't say if you're on those pages you can't be in any of mine. Carla actively would look at people who were part of my pages, and then they would message those people and tell them you're going to get kicked out of my page if you're in her page. It's so dumb. And I don't play those games. So I have Stephen Avery Project. We have MAM Gossip, the closed group where I can get more trashy in the case. And then I have Justice with Jax, because the Stephen Avery case isn't the only case that I advocate for. And a lot of people who come on Stephen Avery Project don't want to hear about any other cases, and I want to talk about other cases. So that's Justice with Jax. But there's all these other pages, and these people don't get along. Whatever. Do their thing. I will, like Millbilly. All right. So Millbilly is here watching right now. He's got a page. I've never met Millbilly. I don't know him. I've tuned into a couple of his things, but not very many. And it's only because it's nothing against him. It's because I guess I just go, my life doesn't revolve around this case. So I cover what I cover, and then I go on with my life, right? But I'm happy to promote his page and tell people about it. It's not all my page or nothing. That's just dumb. And I didn't even start Stephen Avery Project. Somebody else did. And that'll be mentioned in here because they bring him up. All right, let me go back into this because I'm getting way off here. They show the fans walking around Stephen's trailer after one of those rallies. And this was something that I fought with the family about. That I actually fought with the two women that have been part of this whole convicting a murderer that I know from back in the day, that they both told me personally, one of them in person, hey Bryce, one of them in person told me she believes Stephen is guilty. The other one, I have messages from her and tons of screenshots of her saying that Stephen is guilty. So these people were just using the supporter community for whatever they were getting out of it. So I argued with them because when we were planning the first rally, one of those women was now making this into this big, huge show. And so she wanted there to also be a camp out, so that it wouldn't just be a rally. Well, they wanted the rally to be every day of a weekend, so this was going to be a whole weekend extravaganza. And so she wanted there to be everybody to camp out. And so we were originally reaching out to campgrounds in the area to see if we can get, a deal and that kind of stuff. A lot of people didn't want to deal with this show at all. So then it was decided that we would do it at Carla's house. For those that don't know who Carla is the one, once Making a Murderer became a hit, she declared herself the family spokesperson and put her face out there everywhere she could be. And Carla just thought she was the boss of everything. And so Carla said, we'll just have the camp out at my house. I've got, a bunch of property. There's plenty of room that people could camp out on my property. But she knew that her husband didn't want it and didn't want the responsibility. My husband and I so I was friends with Carla at the time, and we were also friends with her husband, Stacy. And Carla said to me that her husband won't do it, so she wanted me to ask because she said Stacy would say yes to me. So then I asked Stacy, and Stacy approved it, but only if my husband and I were there to provide security of the event. And that my husband also wrote up a waiver that anybody who, Dwayne is here. Dwayne, you and I parted ways because of that whole thing. Dwayne is somebody, I can't even remember his full story. You can Google him. He's somebody who did a lot of years. He was wrongfully convicted and finally got free. And this case really stood out to him, and he really wanted to help Brendan. So at the time, I even did an interview with Dwayne, and he wrote a whole thing about his case and how it connects to Making a Murderer, and then that whole debacle with that camp out, because originally we were bringing Dwayne in to, because he would be a special speaker at this event. 18 and a half years Dwayne did. And Dwayne, do you have a book on your story? Because if you have a book or something on your story, please let people know, because you should know about his story. It is heartbreaking on what was done to him. But anyway, we were going to bring Dwayne into that event because he's somebody been there, done that, right? And then things went really bad with me. You should write a book, Dwayne, or if you need help, let me know. Because I self-published on Amazon, and it's pretty easy to do. Anyway, so I keep going down so many paths, but I'm glad to see you here, Dwayne. So, all right, the camp out. So Stacy said it could only happen on their property if my husband and I were there. My husband wrote up a waiver that we were then going to make everybody sign, because I want to protect the family. And at this point, too, I was friends with Barb. I was friends with Scott. And then one of these girls that you see throughout this Convicting a Murderer thing, she then wanted to do this tour of the salvage yard. And I went, wait a minute. No, you can't just have crazy people walking around this salvage yard and put the family at that liability of if somebody's going to say something happened to them when they're there and try and sue the family thinking there's going to be money or all that stuff. And I know from talking to Chuck, because I had also arranged with Chuck at that time, there is somebody who wrote a song. Pretty funny that I'm saying that somebody who wrote a song after I now just panned this other guy writing a song. But Sarah, I'm still Facebook friends with her. Sarah something in the Underground. And the song is Bad Man. And the first time I heard the song is the first time that I went and saw Drizzen and Knight Rider speak. And so they started that event where they played her song. Or actually, she was there performing the song, Bad Man. And so then I had talked to her about the song because I thought it was a good song. And so then I ended up making arrangements with Chuck for her to be able to film a video for that song at the salvage yard. But I know that Chuck didn't want people all over the salvage yard. And my husband and I were just appalled at the thought of having people just willy-nilly walking all over the place there. That it's like, all right, well then, if that's going to happen, there has to be another waiver signed. I don't want people coming back and suing this family or doing whatever. And I just think what I thought back then, this documentary is showing me in some way, at least to me, that I'm right. Because they are using people doing those things and making them look like nut jobs. I'm not saying, Deanna, that people walking around the property, because you walk around there and get a tour, that you're crazy or a nut job. I have done my own. But this whole thing of how people went there and how it was done, just I wasn't cool with it at all. I guess I'll save the rest of that until I get to when I get to those people, period, because I'm going way off topic here. All right, going back in to read. Oh, somebody from Two Rivers. Hello, Christine. Where was I? Okay. A guilter says that they won't accept that Stephen abused women and girls. It's not that people won't accept it. You do not have proof of that. You do not have proof of that. And I swear, I'm not the tinfoil person. If I thought Stephen did something, I would say it. Okay? Marie, Stephen had sex with Marie. It was not rape. It was consensual. She was 17. He was 36? I don't know. I'm really bad with numbers, but that's the number that sticks in my head, that he was 36. I find that creepy, of a 36-year-old having sex with a 17-year-old girl. I don't like it. In Wisconsin, that's the age of consent. Marie is not a blood relative. Stephen didn't, remember Stephen had been in prison for 18 years. And, so he didn't know Marie the 18 years he was in prison, and he was only free 2 years before he went back in. So he doesn't really know Marie as a Earl's stepdaughter, but still, I think it's weird. But whatever, that's not something that he should be in prison for, because it was not rape, and Marie will tell you it's not rape. Candace said Stephen became a faith. And this is the point where they show Curtis Bussey, so Curtis started Stephen Avery Project. And so they were showing him because at the time that Curtis started Stephen Avery Project, he got a tattoo down his arm here that says bravery. And so you have the BR is in one color and then Avery is another because, so then the BR is Brendan and then you have Avery and then bravery. That's the whole thing behind the bravery thing. And Curtis Bussey is just a kid who grew up in the area, so he knew of the case, and he always thought that Stephen was innocent, even from just what he had seen on the news. And then when Making a Murderer came out, he had binged it right away, and he immediately started Stephen Avery Project. Now, if it were me that had started the page, I wouldn't have called it Stephen Avery Project because it's something that gets made fun of that the initials are SAP, SAP. So we're all gullible because we think Stephen is innocent. But Curtis, had Stephen Avery Project. Stephen Avery Project became huge. And Curtis started visiting Stephen, and he visited with Dolores. He met with Kathleen Zellner. He was on the news, and then the family started turning on him because Carla, hi Carla, wanted Stephen Avery Project, and because Carla and her people, her minions, had already run another woman out who had started a Facebook group about this case. Carla wants everybody to just be a part of what she was doing and nothing else. And so Carla and her people did a whole bunch of really horrible things to Curtis. And so Curtis eventually decided he had to leave the case because they get really personal. They were trying to catfish him to ruin his marriage. He had one young child and his wife was pregnant with another. And so when he wanted to leave, he wanted somebody to take over Stephen Avery Project who was not going to be beholden to the family, and that would continue it in the way that he started it, that we believe Stephen is innocent, and that's that. So the moderators he had at that time were people that I had become friendly with, and so they suggested to Curtis that I be the one to take over Stephen Avery Project. So, if you want to know more about the Curtis story, again, in my book, sad plug. And now I have written gross. They go into the Lynn Hartman crap. They show letters that Stephen sent her. Candace claims that Stephen had 18 rules for the gold digger. She didn't say gold digger, that's my word. Then Candace reads a letter where Stephen says he will come on the next letter that he sends to his girlfriend. And he says, taste me and put me in you. Lynn is somebody who preyed on Stephen. Dear Candace, once again, is not giving you the full story about Lynn Hartman and the things that she did to Stephen. I don't know if I want to fully go down that whole thing again. I mean, and this is why you have to edit, right? They want to claim Making a Murderer left things out, and they've also left things out, and here I am leaving stuff out, because now if I go into the whole history of Lynn Hartman thing, I mean, how long are we going to be on here? That she was married to a cop when she started sending letters to Stephen and hitting on Stephen and sending him pictures of herself in a bikini and shit like that. She's the one that was, wanting to be his fiance and crap. And then she goes on the Dr. Phil show. Dr. Phil is a piece of shit. So she goes on the Dr. Phil show and, and so the whole show starts with, she loves Stephen, and they show her shopping for her wedding dress with Steven. And then by the end of the episode, though, she's breaking up with him. And at some point on the episode, too, you hear Steven calling, like he's calling into the show. But that was manipulation and a trick. Steven didn't even know this was going on and thought he was just calling Lynn. He didn't know they were like putting him on the air and all of that. Lynn Hartman, so gross. Total gold digger. And then from there, now she's an active part of the guilter community and saying she knew he was guilty the whole time and all this stupid crap, you know, but she did go visit him a couple times and all just stupid. And okay, so Steven's writing to somebody who he thinks of as his girlfriend. Steven wants to be in love. He wants to be married. He wants children. So what? He writes a letter saying he's going to come on the next letter and taste me and put me in you. I'm sure inmates write letters like that all the frickin' time to their loved ones. What else do you got? Whatever. That doesn't mean Steven's a bad person. Any of you ever write any of like that to anybody? Does that mean you're a killer? No. Whatever. So stupid that they want to show that and try and make that like that's a bad thing. Whatever. Ugh. Earl said they think he is a god and don't see Steven. They think Steven is a god, not Earl. Nobody thinks Earl is a god, that fat fuck. Sorry. I know, shouldn't be fat shaming. I'm fat myself, but oh my God, that guy. So Earl said that they think Steven is a god and they don't see Steven the way that they see him, meaning I'm guessing Earl speaking for the family. I don't know. But Earl has spent a whole lot of years praying is the word of the day. I guess every time I say praying, take a shot, right? Earl's prayed on the supporter community for a long, long time. And just now, things have gotten so bad between Steven and the family that they're switching to the guilter side now. And Dolores is gone. That's the main reason that they will talk about Steven like this now, because Dolores is not around. No, I haven't received any gifts from Earl lately. No trespassing either. I want to scroll back to what did this person say? Oh, it was removed. So I wasn't able to read it before Christopher removed it. Producer guilter, that's what I just refer to this woman who, for those who haven't listened to any of these from the prior ones, she's somebody who claims she was a supporter at first, but then did her own research, and so she knows he's guilty, but she's a producer of this guilty show. So I just refer to her as producer guilter. Producer guilter said one chick was big in the truther community. They interviewed her once and then she asked to talk to them again because she had more questions. She said her mind was already swaying when she did the first interview. She now says she has to concede she could be wrong. And then the other chick that was with her said, "We have been duped." All right, let me first read the paragraph I wrote before I get completely off in the other thing. Because what I had written after that, I said, I've paused the episode as I am not taking notes as I watch this time and just straight up writing this recap as I watch. I am getting so mad as these two chicks the crapumentary are talking to, I know very well, and know they have been guilters the entire time they have been affiliated with this case. One of them has actually been to my house, and we went to Manitowoc together. I do not think I am going to get fully into that rant here, and you will have to watch my Facebook Live rant when I cover this episode. So here we are on that. I will say these girls' names this one time. Christine Frandsen, or Franson, don't remember. Christine, Krystyne, and Megan Prather. So these two girls were affiliated when I was organizing the first rally. And Megan, who I always refer to when I talk about her in MAM Gossip as Megan, capital M, capital E, Megan, is just all about promoting herself. So without going completely into everything that happened when I was trying to organize that rally and what Manitowoc was trying to do to stop me from it, eventually it was taken away from Manitowoc Sheriff's Department, who was really trying to screw with me. And then I was dealing with the Manitowoc Police Department. That is another reason all these years I always say you have to make sure you differentiate between the two. Because Manitowoc Police treated me well, and they are not the ones who did this to Stephen. That's the Manitowoc Sheriff's Department. But so when I finally got, with the ACLU of Wisconsin, thank you, ACLU of Wisconsin, got their help in letting me have this event for free because the Sheriff's Department wanted me to spend $2,000 to do it. I then had to talk to the police about what the rules would be. This was my first time organizing a protest or a rally, and I didn't really know, I know it's our constitutional right to peacefully protest, but I didn't know all the details. And now, oh my God, I can't even tell you how many protests and rallies I have organized. So I know everything there is to know on it. But, so what the Manitowoc Police Department told me is we were not allowed to use sound amplification, which is standard. I know that now from everything I do. I've got a protest I'm doing on Saturday, and I know you can't have sound amplification, but I also know how hard it is for them to do anything. So people call the cops, the people I'm protesting, they have sound amplification, and then we've called the cops on them, and then the cops come and tell them you can't use that, then the cops leave, and then they start using it again. It's, so they told me no sound amplification. Again, this was my very first time, and I wanted to obey by the rules because I am not a hater of law enforcement. That's what people are going to automatically assume on all of this. But again, remember, I said there's good and bad in everything. There's good cops and bad cops. So this being my very first one, I'm not going to argue with it. And I thought that was a reasonable request. No sound amplification. That's fine. But Megan had been to the courthouse in January of that year. And so she was in the press. There was a picture of her on the stairs of the courthouse with the megaphone, and there was video of it. And so she's like, I'm bringing my megaphone because that's what I'm known for. And I'm like, nobody gives a crap about you and your megaphone. And the police say no megaphone. Don't make us look like idiots and don't cause problems with the police when there doesn't need to be one. You don't need to bring a megaphone. She's, I'm bringing it. It's what I'm known for. That's so stupid. The other thing the police told me is that we could not be on the stairs of the courthouse because that is private property. We can be on public property, the sidewalk. We couldn't be on there. And Megan's like, no, I've been on those steps before and I'm going to do it again. I mean, she was just really ridiculous in making it all about her and attention for her. And I'm like, this isn't supposed to be about that. And we're not supposed to be showing his supporters as bad people and doing things wrong and breaking the rules. I really had a problem with that. And then where I can bring Christine into this whole thing, Christine had nothing to do with the organizing of the rally. But for what Christine at that time was BFFs with Carla. She was minion number one for Carla. And so Christine started contacting press and seeing if they wanted to do interviews about the rally before the rally had even happened. And so then Christine wanted to do a call with me and Megan and one other girl, that the three of us girls were like splitting work in organizing this rally, which then became the and they're both named Megan. The two Megans had no clue what they were doing and did nothing, and I had to do everything. So Christine wanted to do a joint call with all of us, and the Megans didn't show up on the call. And so Christine said there was this one press outlet that wanted to do an interview with us about the planning of the rally. And so when I was done talking to Christine, not this Christine, that's posting on here, different Christine, or that Christine that just posted. So I then called the two Megans to tell her what Christine wanted to talk to us about. And Megan got so upset because she's like, I'm the face, and if anybody's talking to press, it's only going to be me. Only me. I'm the only one that can talk to the press. And I'm like, talk to the press, whatever. It's so stupid. And see this drama that's all about it, and not thinking about what is good for Stephen and Brendan, just all about, I want to be on camera and I want to talk to the press. Meanwhile, so Megan lives in Illinois and I'm in Illinois. So I used to do, because back then too, I'm still an admin, but I haven't done anything with it in years. It's called Free Brendan, or is it Free Brendan Dassey? I can't remember. So I used to do regular Facebook Lives, and I would do them from my house, and people who were local could come to my house and be a part of this just live discussion on the case. Carla and Stacy drove down once. Barb and Scott were supposed to come once. Anyway, so Megan was here with her husband, who she later cheated on, but I'm not even going to get into that one. And so we were doing that live, I remember, at my fire pit outside. And that's when Megan and her husband both told me they think Stephen is guilty. And it's like, then why are you here? And then since then, I know all these money-making schemes they've all done. Christine made money off of that event. So did Megan. Supporters were donating money, and they were splitting it. They thought the money was going to Stephen and Brendan, but really Christine and Carla and Megan, they pocketed that money from supporters. All right. That's enough of that little background of those two chicks that were on this episode. I got so much more. Back to my recap. It says, back to the bullshit. Gilter said she was forced to have filters. So Christine, because now I was just referring to her as Gilter, that she was forced to have filters and prevented from going a direction she should have gone. She said, you ignore the possibility that he is guilty. And then she says, you wonder, are you really that dumb and blind? I have screenshots from over the years where Christine has posted that Stephen was guilty. She has said it many times, yet then every year, these rallies at the courthouse, she's there. But she makes these posts that Stephen is guilty. Fuck Stephen, blah, blah, blah. I mean, we've shared them. They're all in MAM gossip. We've gone over it for years. But now she's on this piece of crap, pretending that she's been a supporter, and all of a sudden, after being interviewed as a supporter for this show, her mind's been changed. She has said he's guilty forever. But she also, I don't know if I put it in here at one point. I think I did put it in here that I'll be reading at some other point. She did a GoFundMe for herself that she put in all the family groups, asking people to donate money to her, and people did. These people were all about making money for themselves, which now they're going to say is what I'm doing by plugging my book. Another guilter said the theories get more and more outlandish. She says some stupid thing about cows. And I've never heard this cow thing before. And there's so much parts of this episode that I even didn't start writing about because these theories and stuff are just dumb. And it seems like it's coming from Reddit. And so it was some cow thing that they're saying that talk to farmers and cows would be able to indicate if they had seen Teresa or some crap. I don't know. But yeah, there's lots of weird theories out there. I'll go over some of the ones they listed, and there's plenty more. Like, it's not Edward Wayne Edwards. I know that's been brought up. It's not Edward Wayne Edwards. I also do not believe Teresa Halbach is alive. But I also say, and they'll talk more about the bones too, there's no proof those are Teresa Halbach's bones. They most likely are. There's no for sure proof they are. The next thing I have written is they scoff at people saying the bones aren't Teresa's. A guilter said the worst theory is that Teresa is still alive and maybe in Canada. Shut up, Price. It's not an owl. Oh, the staircase. It's not an owl. It's not a tuma. I think that was mine and Bryce's first fight. It's not an owl. Teresa Halbach is not in Canada. I feel for the woman in Canada that has been. Oh, Christopher posted an owl. I feel bad for a woman in Canada that people say resemble Teresa Halbach, that I know some fans have caused some misery for that woman. I'm not all about that. But again, they're only showing his favorite fight of all time. They're only showing the crazies on the supporter side. They're not showing the crazies on the guilter side. Well, actually they are. They're on here acting like they're sane people, but whatever. Back to making fun of people saying they aren't her bones. They show an expert on the stand. And then Krat said one bone was a leg bone that had tissue on it that was tested. And Factbender says it was Teresa. But again, it's not a 100% that it is. Whatever. So then we hear a call between Stephen and his dad, where Stephen said they have muscle they found in the pit that matches Teresa. So they're now, the show is trying to use, since Stephen said that to his dad, that means fact, it was Teresa, because Stephen is saying that they found it. Stephen's just reporting to his dad what he's being told. Doesn't mean that for sure that muscle is Teresa's. And so now they also want to just beat up on Alan for saying something not nice. And I'm going to say the actual word because I am not bothered by the word, but a lot of people are. So if you are listening to this where there are children, I'm going to be saying a bad word. So take precautions for it. So Alan says, what kind of muscle? From her cunt? And so then Candace said, that is the worst thing she has ever heard from a prison call. Really? That's the worst thing? Then you haven't done your homework, honey. It's a bad word, and it's gross that Al joked about it like that. Because, yes, I mean, as the show's going to push in a minute, at the end of all this, Teresa Halbach is gone and most likely has been killed. And that is sad. You know, I am not here to beat up on Teresa, even though I will be saying something about her in the negative in this. But that doesn't mean Stephen did anything to Teresa because Alan said something yucky and has a gross sense of humor. Oh, now we see big hair Sherry Culhane on the stand saying she examined the bones. Candace said people think she might be alive because Big Hair didn't have enough of a sample, or big enough sample. One fan said she thinks it is Teresa's cremains. Candace said even locals thought it wasn't Teresa's cremains. Then we see Michael Halbach during one of the press conferences he did saying, now at least they know what's happened to Teresa. I don't see the point in this sensationalism here, and found this cruel. But they make an alleged friend of Teresa's cry, reading her someone's post saying Teresa is still alive. And so the woman cries, and she doesn't like that people write mean things about Teresa. She said her remains fit in a shoebox. Producer Gilter said what they have done to Teresa's family made her see a different side of humanity. Who has done anything to Teresa's family? People questioning the family always would happen. Nothing is being done to them. They live their lives quite well, actually. Where am I? Oh, and now I posted, I had to pause it here when this Gilter prick was whining about these alleged vile things people have posted about Teresa, when you can read my book to see what this guy has posted and done to me over the years. I knew him when he claimed to believe they were innocent, and then when he switched sides, he came for me very hard on Twitter. I have tons of screenshots to prove it. They're in, actually, the MAM gossip group. But now in this crapumentary, he is acting like he cares about people's feelings. Nice try. So his name, Richard Donovan, is such a scumbag. Total scumbag. And things he has posted about me and the words he has used about me, including that word I said previously, he has said that about me I don't know how many times. He has said things about my husband. But Candace isn't showing that side of Richard Donovan at all. He reads some tweets, which is so hypocritical. Why don't you show the nasty tweets he has made, dear Candace? Then they show when Alec Baldwin had posted about the case, and that he didn't think Michael Halbach was mourning Teresa. I had to pause again when this Gilter literally said the words common decency. Oh man, I'm going to have to get some of the screenshots of when he has made posts about me and my husband. This man does not have any common decency for anyone. But the show is trying to make it so. I am not going to go over any of the mean tweets they are showing, unless they want to show both sides and what Gilters say on the regular. They scoff at people saying the family didn't seem to be grieving. That is one thing that I have always defended. I have always said we cannot judge how the Halbach family was behaving. You do not know how they were raised. My friend, who you heard the Madonna ringtone when he called, he was raised that You do not cry. You period. Um so the family's putting on a strong face in the public. You don't know what they're doing in private. I have I have questions of some things, but I'm not saying they didn't love Teresa and that they don't miss Teresa and that this isn't a tragedy for their family. And I went to court and the Hallbachs, I went to Brendan's when he was at the 7th Circuit here in Chicago, and the Hallbach family was sitting there, saw them there. I saw them walk in because they also had the Hallbachs in a special room. They didn't have to wait in line with all the rest of us, where Ken Kratz was literally like 4 people in front of me in line. Ken Kratz had to wait in line with all of us losers. But the Hallbach family got a private room to be in. And then there was the front row in that courtroom was reserved for them. And they had a quilt that was over the back, because it's a big bench that everybody would sit on. And so there was a quilt. I'm sure that's going to have some significance to Teresa. And the family came in and sat there and they were very stone-faced. But I will never say they did not miss their loved one. And so I tell people when they have said things to me about that over the years that they weren't mourning her, I just go, you don't know. They're behaving that way in public. So I'm not faulting them for that at all. Press douche said making a murderer is just for entertainment. But then the family has to relive it over and over and accused of being part of the conspiracy. Gilter said the Hallbach family showed so much class throughout. Then we see Candace in a bar. She says it's a bar that Teresa liked to go to. Candace said she wanted to make sure they told her story and not commit the same sin that Netflix did. But I bet she doesn't talk about how Teresa broke up a marriage. But I'm not going to get into all of that. Where there's reasons that other people would have an issue with Teresa Hallbach. That she had a threesome with this married couple, and then it became a twosome, and he left his wife for Teresa. So they want to show only nice things about Teresa and bad things about Stephen, when there's good and bad, again, on both sides. So they show what I'm assuming is Teresa's funeral. And you see Michael Hallbach up at a podium, speaking about his sister, and his voice is quivering. So, so the show is really trying to show you that the family did miss her. They show a friend speak at the trial. I guess I think that's when, for sentencing, when you get the impact statements. And this was the friend who was with Teresa at the costume party the weekend before. This will also be the same friend who said Teresa was very paranoid about losing her keys. Just got to drop that in there that they don't mention. Then they show Michael Hallbach saying he has grown numb to what probably happened to her that day. Glasses is who I refer to, that one press chick that has glasses. Glasses says he told her he has a voicemail saved on his phone when Teresa had called him to sing happy birthday to him. Candace said she was murdered again by these 2 documentary makers. And so I have written dramatic much. Teresa Hallbach was not murdered by the documentarians. The documentarians wanted to give both sides of this case. That is why they were showing these press conferences. They went to the family, wanted the family to be a part of it. They wanted Sweaty Sweat Ken Kratz involved. They all said no. Candace said people need to remember that Teresa was a real human being. But then they go from that and showing that weird video Teresa had made when she was talking about what she loves and that stuff that and it was like a project that she was doing. I don't know, but it was just very weird. Then we see Candy Avery said they do memorials for Teresa and how much she shined. She feels really sorry for her family. Candy cries and producer Gilter hugs her. Douche said it is unfair for Teresa. She is just an object that got the conspiracy rolling. They show an interview with the documentarians that said they weren't interested in having an impact in the case. Then they play a phone call the documentarians had with Stephen. They ask what would he want his community to know. So they're trying to use the phone calls that Laura and Moira had with Stephen to try and make it out like proof that they were going to be doing a piece in support of Stephen. But them saying anything positive to Stephen, I'll even have a thing where how they edited it didn't even have the impact that they think it was going to have. So let me go into more of it. Candace said Laura said she wanted to do the film because it would help him in some way. Yet when they play the audio, she doesn't say help him, but she says hopes it helps in some way. Way to creatively edit, dear Candace. Because so the documentarians didn't say we want this to help you, Stephen. They said we hope this will help in some way. And them being sympathetic to Stephen doesn't mean they're saying he's innocent. They're just being sympathetic to Stephen when they're on the phone with him. That doesn't mean they're going to do some hatchet job on Teresa. Candace said they have tried really hard not to have an impact on the case, but if you ask Stephen, they were very involved in helping with his defense. We hear Stephen tell Debbie, remember Debbie, the one who got the documentarians to begin with, that the documentarian is investigating and finding a lot of stuff. Then we hear a call with Chuck saying it sounds really good what Laura is looking into. But again, this is stuff Stephen is saying. Stephen is feeling good that somebody is looking into the case and not just saying, Stephen, you did it. So Stephen saying they're investigating because, okay, they're documentarians, they're looking into things, and him being positive about it, again, doesn't mean this is going to be something all about Stephen is innocent and just trying to say Stephen is innocent. You can't go off of Stephen feeling good about it to say that means what the documentarians were doing. That's how Stephen felt about it. Kratz said he subpoenaed their work because they aren't media anymore. They are part of the defense. Candace said they claim not to be journalists, but then claim journalistic privilege, and the judge did rule in the documentarians' favor. They did not have to hand over their work product to Kratz. And then we hear another call of Stephen and Laura where he said to talk to Chucky about that guy and what he just found out. This show is trying to make that suspicious, but again, Stephen's cooperating with the documentarians and nobody else is. So of course, if Chuck is saying something to Stephen of got this guy or a witness or whatever, these people should talk to him. Yeah, Stephen's going to say, go talk to these people. Nothing suspicious about that. Nothing trying to that, because again, you don't know what the documentarians are going to do. Gilter producer said Buting snuck a camera in to film Stephen after the documentarians I'll just read what I wrote here, weren't allowed to bring a camera in. Then they showed Kratz attacking Buting on Dr. Phil about the camera. Guilters say they were once friends with Buting when they were on tour. And Prestouche says he lost a lot of respect for them for doing the tour. This documentary, or whatever you want to call it, crapumentary, mockumentary, so they're showing you that Kratz was filming Buting during lawyer-client privilege meeting that you're not allowed to film. So 2 wrongs don't make it right. For Buting to be in there with the camera, but Buting's explained that before, and I don't remember his explanation. But for Buting to bring a camera in there, okay, saying that's wrong, that he shouldn't be able to do that. But you're not allowed to film and watch and listen to Stephen having a meeting with their lawyer. Yet Kratz was watching. How much more did he watch of when the lawyers talked with Stephen? But sweet dear Candace doesn't talk about Kratz breaking that rule. Good and bad and everything. Prestouche said Making a Murderer presented law enforcement as being hell-bent on revenge because he is going to cost them millions. Fackbender said they edited footage to make their narrative. Rich. Candace said, why did they show Lenk and Fackbender together? She thinks they wanted to make a connection when there wasn't. Fackbender said he got a laugh when they did that. He's claiming he didn't meet with Lenk prior to November. Candace brings up the shoes in the closet in the video when Wendy Baldwin said they should take his shoes for unsolved crimes. Candace claims it wasn't Stephen's residence or his shoes. I guess we just have to take her word for that, as they show no proof of what she is claiming. They don't show anything on there on then where'd that video come from of the shoes that Wendy Baldwin is talking about. They also don't talk about the flyover video that Wendy Baldwin was a part of, and that we only have X amount of that footage and not the entirety of when they flew over the salvage yard that would have shown was the RAV4 there or not. So I have to keep being an asshole and pointing this stuff out, because when you want to attack Making a Murderer, saying that they're not showing you everything, which guilters have attacked forever since Making a Murderer came out, and my response has always been, there is so much, you can't possibly show everything, and the more you actually look into the case and the stuff that wasn't shown, the more shows Stephen is innocent, not guilty. But now this thing that sweet dear Candace is trying to make as this is the one true thing, they aren't telling you everything. They are only showing you snippets. You're only seeing snippets of people on the stand, hearing snippets of phone calls. You are not getting everything in its entirety. So for you to say these are not, this wasn't when Wendy Baldwin was laughing about Stephen's letter from the Innocence Project. Guess he won't be making that. Then where'd that video come from that the documentarians used? Prove it. Guilter producer felt betrayed after watching Making a Murderer because she trusted them. So now she trusted the documentarians. Candace said a lot of people are now learning documentaries are not news. I guess I should hashtag fake news. Dear Candace would like that one. Fake news. This is what I wrote for here. there was a really boring section where they have some expert talking about fake news. I didn't pay attention as it has nothing to do with the case and I don't care. And then at some point they show lemmings jumping off a cliff. I don't give a shit about things over the years that have been in the news or documentaries that have been made that aren't truthful. Making a Murderer is what woke me up to that. I'm somebody who likes true crime. And watching Making a Murderer and then going and looking into other things, I was like, holy cow, then all these true crime things I've watched, what's true? And then this other case that I'm involved in that none of you want to hear about, but the Marnie Yang case, everything that's been made about her. So like, there's an episode on her case from Snapped that's on the Oxygen channel. I have sat in with Marnie's legal team, with all, the ballistics experts, medical people, law enforcement, all this, going over all the evidence in Marnie's case. I have seen the crime scene photos. And then when I watch Snapped, when it's things like, oh, the last thing the victim did is she wrapped her hands around her pregnant belly as she then fell back onto the floor. The woman was on her stomach, and her keys are in one hand and her purse is in another. So I know watching that, I see the crime scene photos. I know that the way Snapped showed that case is not true. It's not with the evidence. It's not with the science. So I have to question everything. Now when I watch things, I just don't know. I don't need some expert going to show me how things over the years that people then saw somewhere and then believe is fact and it wasn't. We all know that. So I totally tuned out during their fake expert and was just waiting for them to get back to talking about the case. Next section is saying that Making a Murderer edited Colburn's testimony, yet his lawsuit went nowhere. That's so you want to say, but they ruled against Colburn. Candace said Netflix said they weren't part of making it. They distributed it. Candace tries to show that Netflix is responsible for the editing because she says they took home an Emmy for editing. Nice stretch again, dear Candace. And so this is what I wrote. Can I just tell you how bored I am watching this? This is what they saved for their grand finale. They show that there was a bomb threat to the Manitowoc courthouse. Then they show more mean tweets. Yet again, aren't showing the disgusting stuff that Guilters post. Guilter producer can't believe during #MeToo that people explain away people's allegations against Stephen. Christine, that I'm using her name again, said, I know, or said, you can't. And so I wrote, oh, I can't wait to rip on that chick. I should pull up screenshots of things she has sent me over the years, too. Did I mention she stole money from supporters from the first rally? How about her GoFundMe that she was trying to get money from supporters? Please, she has never been a supporter. Candace sits in court and said she can't understand the documentarian's mindset. They knew he tortured animals, chased his cousin off the road, abused women, but they walked away saying, how do we cheapen his crimes so they think he is an innocent man? Factbender said the hurt Making a Murderer caused to good, solid people. His voice quivers when he says, yet quivers yet. So his voice quivers, and then my comment is, but what about what he did to Brendan? Feels so bad for the Hallbach family, not what he's done to Brendan. I'm just going to come out and say it. Who shot her in the head? Candace will forever remember they took a villain and made into a hero. Kratt said, call it a docudrama or advocacy piece. It's not a documentary. Colborn said that character doesn't exist like what they did to me. Blah, blah. Then we hear Steven says on a call that it feels good that someone believes him and wants to get the story out. Prestouche said they were the single best advocate he had because they convinced millions of people he was innocent. He thinks the only story they wanted to tell was police corruption. I again want to say that's not Stephen feeling good about what the documentarians was doing in his conversations with him. Doesn't mean the documentarians were doing a piece in support of Stephen. Gilter said they deserved their award for editing because they did a great job. Anybody? Candace said they are storytellers. They were committed to a story. And so then it ends with, dramatic words popping up, saying things. So it ends saying the documentarians reported, so they don't even have proof of this, their reported fee for speaking engagements is $20,000 to $30,000, which I want to know, Candace, how much were you paid for this? And that Stephen and Brendan were only paid $5,000 each for the exclusive rights to their life stories. Let me pause there. I've talked to Stephen about this. I've talked to Brendan about this. I've talked to Barb about this. And I didn't write this in here. But yes, it is true. Stephen and Brendan only got $5,000 each for the first Making a Murderer. And it was signing away their exclusive rights to their life story. So Netflix does own it. There were new deals made for part 2. And that's all I'm going to say on that. I don't. I'm not going. I'm not going. I do know what at least Stephen got, but I'm not going to go into that. But let's just say he's okay. A thing came up saying Colborn's case was dismissed March 10, 2023. The very end shows a picture of Teresa and said, "This was in loving memory to her. Rest in peace." And that is the end of this shit show. This episode sucked. They had nothing on here. They just really wanted to try and tear apart the documentarians and Making a Murderer. That was the whole point of this episode. And you can't put the genie back in the bottle, no matter how hard you try. And you're totally hypocritical for trying to say they didn't show you everything and you're not showing everything. So, as always, I'm going off of science and facts and witnesses. I am not judging these people based on what they look like, where they live, how they talk. There's no reason for Stephen to murder some girl he doesn't even know. He wouldn't call Auto Trader and leave that trail that she was going there. He could have just called her cell phone directly. Bobby Dassey has lied time and time again. They want to rip Stephen for anything sexual in his life, yet they don't talk about Bobby's. They don't talk about Bobby's own brothers saying that they saw Bobby driving the RAV4. That they know that Bobby had told them that he saw Teresa Halbach leave. They don't show that Scott Taddock told me to my face when I was in his house that he doesn't even know if there was a fire that night. He doesn't remember. And that law enforcement wanted him to say there was a fire. And they wanted him to say it was a big fire. So he said that. Brian Dassey told me everything that was done to Brendan, law enforcement tried to do to him. They were trying to trip him up and getting him to say things. But Brian Dassey doesn't have the IQ level and also is older than Brendan. I'm not going to go over every piece of evidence piece by piece. We've gone through it on here. I've gone through it a million times. I'm on an hour and a half. My husband wants dinner. I want dinner. But as we are coming up to the anniversary, Halloween is right around the corner. What is today's date? The 26th. Stephen's supporters are the only ones who want justice for Teresa Halbach, because we know Stephen didn't do it, and whoever hurt Teresa Halbach is still out there. And this convicting a murderer is a total piece of shit. Anybody who took part in this that claims to be a supporter, you're not, because they just made you look like a joke. This is why I tell people, don't go to that rally at the courthouse. It's just made to make his supporters look ridiculous. And it hurts Stephen. It doesn't help him. Stephen likes the rallies. Don't get me wrong on there. Stephen likes the rallies. But Stephen doesn't know what's best for him. He's done things lately, submitting things to the court himself, or having his fans submit it for him. You're not helping Stephen. Back when I used to talk to Stephen, there were things he asked me to do. I always checked with Kathleen Zellner before doing it. So, like, Stephen knows my husband owns a print shop, and he wanted me to make shirts and sell them. Kathleen Zellner told me not to, so I didn't. That made Stephen mad at me. After one of Kathleen's filings, I don't know if it was the first time when she was really pointing the finger at Bobby, Stephen asked me to post on Stephen Avery Project. How do I word this? He wanted me to push Barb's buttons. And I said, Oh my God, Stephen, you already know, because at that point, Barb hated me and all the Avery family hated me. And I said, you know, if I do this, you know, people are going to come at me even harder because, you know, there's so many people that are sympathetic to Barb. And I actually I was in Las Vegas too. So I was going back, talking to Stephen in my room. And, so I, got the okay from Zellner to do it. And so I did it on Stephen Avery Project. I posted something to push her buttons and it worked because Barb a lot of times cannot resist. Hi, Barb, because Barb will watch this too. I mean, there's times on my videos, all of a sudden Barb will make a comment on it. And so I can't even remember what I posted or what it was, but it did. It drew Barb out and she started commenting because Barb trips herself up all the time and says things she shouldn't say. That just gets Bobby in more trouble. What happened to Stephen's lawyer? He still has Kathleen Zellner, is still his attorney. So, all right, I'm going to call this one to a close. I don't know when my next live, unless something happens with Stephen's case, I know my next live will be on Justice with Jax on the Marnie gang case because we were supposed to be in court today. I'm not going to get into it because you guys don't care, but a whole lot of drama happened that we weren't able to go to court today. And so now it's been rescheduled for November 8th. So, because I'll be attending court, I'm actually picking up Marnie's dad and driving him to court because he's not able to drive himself. So I'll be doing that on Justice with Jax after court. There shouldn't be any more episodes of this, so I'm going to go down that rabbit hole of trying to figure out how to cancel this so my husband doesn't have to pay for November. Allegedly, the people involved in this crapumentary has been in talks with Christopher, my moderator and friend, of wanting there to be a head-to-head thing between Candace and I. I don't know. We'll see what happens with that. So, all right. I'm going to have my dinner. Thank you, everybody, for joining me. Pay attention to Stephen Avery Project. I will post the summaries I did of 9 and 10, and then I still got to write all the ones in the middle that I haven't written yet. If anything happens in Stephen's case, we post it as soon as we get it, and I go live. Unfortunately, I don't have the free time anymore, but, you know, as soon as I can, I will go live. If you know anything about this case, please go to Kathleen's website, KathleenTZellner.com. She has an email and a phone number just for Stephen's case. So, you know, pass on that information to Kathleen. If you want to donate to Stephen, you can also do that off of her website. One last plug for my book that is only available on Amazon because I self-published. This is my history with the case. You know, so it's up until when, because I just released this book a year ago. So my history with the case until up to that point. And I do have another book on the case I want to write, but we'll see when I get around to that. So, all right, now I'm really going to go. Thank you, everybody. As always, investigation continues.